In the full history of time of smartphones, have any two devices changed more over time since they were released than Microsoft's Surface Duo and Surface Duo 2? Honestly, I don't know that any have. These two devices are radically different than they were before, and Duo 1 in particular is miles and miles ahead of where it was whenever it launched. So today, I'm gonna do something that I've been getting a lot of requests for, right? You can get Duo 1 for less than $500 now pretty routinely. We have just seen Duo 2 come down to $999. Now, whenever you're watching this, I don't know what the price is gonna be, but right now, the 15th of April, $999 for Surface Duo 2. And I've got a lot of people asking me, is Duo 2 worth it? Should I just get the original Duo for cheaper? What's the difference between the two? How much better is Duo 2 than Duo 1? So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to just answer that question as best I can. I can't really tell you which one's better than the other necessarily, but I can show you everything I can possibly show you and let you make that determination yourself. So let's start this thing off with the simplest way I know. I'm going to boot them both up at the same time, and then we're going to do some app loading speed tests. Okay, so let's start off by trying to power both of these devices up at the same time. Let's see how accurate I can be here starting now. Okay, I think I did that at exactly the same time. I feel pretty good about that, so let's now sit back and let this play out and see which one boots faster, if one does boot faster than the other. Duo 2 seems to have a little bit of an advantage here in terms of that speed. We're already on our lock screen there, and then there we are on Duo number 1. Let's try to now do the pin and then log in at the same time as well. All right. And there, Duo 1 actually is beginning to render my icons quicker. Duo 2 now catches up. They're in the same spot. They both have one more thing to render. Duo 2 still trying to load up an image for the widget. Duo 1, not really sure what it's doing. Oh, there's that last widget. We're almost caught up. And Duo 1 actually finishes first there in that. Oh, well, we just lost our widget. Okay, so we're done on Duo 2. Duo 1 seems to have lost that widget. It still is acting like it's there, but I don't know what's going on with that widget. It definitely knows that it's there, but yeah. Now let's do some speed tests, right? Let's see if either one of these devices seems to launch apps any more quickly than the other. Let's start with the Google Play Store. How about CX File Explorer? How about OneNote? To-do list. Interesting. Relay Pro for Reddit. Twitter. For some reason, we loaded up on two different screens. So let's clear these both out, and we'll do Twitter again. Okay. YouTube Music. Now let's leave YouTube Music up there, and let's open up some other things so we have two things running. How about Nest? Nest is always a tough one. Always seems to take a long time. Running similarly, but Duo 1 actually running a little bit quicker on some of these. How about YouTube? Instagram. How about for a game, let's do Pokemon Go. So I think that's a pretty interesting result. The original Duo is definitely not lagging behind. It's definitely not running slowly in any way, shape, or form. In the heavier applications, it seemed like Duo 2 would take the lead. Gaming applications, and that does make sense. But in normal stuff, they were trading blows. And this is really, this is something I've said for a long time. These devices are way more powerful than you need them to be. The software is going to be the speed limit, the limiting factor on these things. So I'm not really shocked by this revelation, to be honest with you. Duo 1, pretty quick as well. Duo 2 is a fast phone. So is the original Duo. So with that out of the way, I think that the next most obvious thing to talk about is just the general hardware itself, the design aesthetics and so forth. Some of this is going to be my opinion, so take that with a grain of salt, but let's take a look at the actual hardware of Duo 2 and Duo 1 now. So when we talk about the original Surface Duo, this is going to be opinion, but I think Duo 1 and Duo 2, I think Surface Duo in general, is just an absolutely beautiful piece of hardware. I love this minimal design. I love the way that the thing looks. I know that it is really basic and really simple, but it's my preference, and I just really like the way that it does look. And on the inside, I know a lot of people, they hate the giant bezels on the top and the bottom. I'm actually really not bothered by the bezels at all. They really do not bother me. And then, of course, on Duo 1, you've got the ability to fold it all the way back around into a phone mode orientation, and it just feels so good. The original Duo is one of those devices still now in 2022 that when you hand it to someone, they have a reaction. They almost don't believe that this is real. It is so preposterously thin. It is about as thick as a USB-C port. We'll be talking about you in a minute. And it's an incredible feeling device. When we talk about Duo 2, a lot of that stuff is still true, right? That minimal design language is still really good. I really like the black look on Duo 2. It is a little bit thicker than the original Duo. Not a lot. It is still almost impossibly thin, but it is a little bit thicker than the original Duo. The bezels are slightly smaller, but they're still there. And again, that's not something that I am super bothered by still. We do have some better screens on this in terms of the refresh rate. We'll talk about that a bit later. This is just about the aesthetics. And then we do have that big camera bump on the back. And a lot of people absolutely hate that camera bump for a couple of reasons. One, just because it looks like it's just sort of haphazardly glued onto the back of it. I remember when this was first leaked, a ton of people refused to believe this was going to be real, and it was very funny. And then, of course, because of that camera bump, whenever you put it back into phone mode, you do have a gap in the middle. So while I do think Duo 2 still does look good, I'm not going to say anything shocking here. I think Duo 1 is the better looking device overall. When we begin talking about build quality, though, things do get a little bit different for me. We're talking about which one feels sturdier, feels stronger, maybe is stronger. I think Duo 2 is the obvious answer there. I think that there's a few things about the original Duo that I can immediately point out. You may have noticed on mine, if I can get the light to hit it just right, maybe I can, maybe I can't. This might be difficult. There we go. You can see it there. It is cracked. This thing was dropped from a very short height. It landed just wrong, and it did crack, and I have a screen protector actually on the outside of it to sort of keep any glass from falling out, but you can see there that I did have a little bit of an oopsie daisy, and it is broken. You can also talk about the USB-C port, which is also, I'm missing a chunk of plastic there that is broken. That is something that is really common on these devices. Duo 2 does feel a bit more heavy duty. It is actually physically heavier. It is thicker. I've not seen as many broken USB-C ports on Duo 2. I know some people have broken theirs, but this was a rash of reports here. Not nearly the case there. This device was also dropped, and strangely enough, it landed right there. You can actually see, if this will focus, you can actually see just a little bit of a dent right there on the corner. And guess what didn't happen? I mean, we're talking about an impact on almost the exact same place. No breakage there, some breakage here, and then it landed, I'm telling you, it landed on the exact same spot. So in terms of build quality, I'm going to give that one to Duo 2. Something else about Duo 2 that I think is a little bit better is the hinge feel. The hinges are extremely similar, but what I will say is that the hinge on Duo 1, look, it feels great, okay? And it is definitely not loose. It's going to stay in any orientation, any position that you want it to be in. Duo 2's hinge is stiffer. And so that's going to be a preferential thing, but I think that the hinge is smoother and stiffer on Duo 2, and I think that that would, again, be my preference. Let's talk about the fingerprint scanner, because when we're on hardware, that is something that is different. On the original Duo, the fingerprint scanner is its own section. You have volume rocker, power, and then fingerprint scanner. And I've actually seen several people who the fingerprint scanner just stopped working for them. Hopefully that does not happen to you or to me, but that is a thing. On Duo 2, it is all part of the same button. You just have a power button, which doubles as your fingerprint scanner. This is definitely going to be down to preference, and honestly, I don't care. It's fine either way. I think this is simpler, but I don't dislike having it separate. That is going to be very much a preference. But then I guess we should also talk about which fingerprint scanner is quicker, and that's going to be something I can pretty well show you here. So let's just unlock Duo 1, and let's unlock Duo 2, and I guess let's do it again just to give you a couple of samples here. So unlocking now. Unlocking now. I think it's pretty clear which one is the quicker to wake up from unlock. Now, I will say this. Sometimes this is quicker than that, okay? Sometimes it's a little slow. Sometimes it's much faster. That's pretty doggone slow. Sometimes it's quicker, though. While we're here just looking at these big, beautiful screens, let's talk about them. So the screen sizes are extremely similar. If I line them up like this at the bottom, you can see Duo 2 screen is just a little bit bigger, just a hair bigger. The actual body of the devices are effectively the same size. They just made the screens a little bit taller. So that is something to definitely consider. The resolution is, if I'm not mistaken, literally the same if you just add the extra pixels to the top. The refresh rate is 90 hertz here and 60 hertz here, which you're going to see in scrolling. So Duo 1 doesn't look terrible, but Duo 2 does definitely. When it's in person, you're not going to be able to see this in the video, but in person, it is the smoother device because of that higher refresh rate. From what I've read, they both have 401 pixels per inch, and they both have a peak brightness rated at 800 nits. So the screens are really, really similar. Bigger, higher refresh, not a lot of differences otherwise. Now, some people will say that there is a difference in the color reproduction, and that's something that I've actually noticed myself, and I believe I have an example here that I can give us. So this was on a little thread here on Twitter where I was having a conversation about the color reproduction, and I can show you here. This is Duo 1, this is Duo 2. This is on HDR content. They both are HDR enabled. Duo 1 is just warmer, okay? It just is a warmer, kind of slightly more blown out image to my eyes. On image number 2, you can see how red that is, and that's more natural to what a piece of, I believe, salmon perhaps would look like. That is very, very warm and so I would say oversaturated, but fair enough. Some people are going to prefer that image, like this individual here. They say that they like the image reproduction, the color reproduction on the original Duo more. Now, something that is actually quite different between the two of them is the way that the screens come together. So on the original Duo, the screens themselves are not curved in any way. They are totally flat. And if you look here, you can just see right where the edges that they come to. And the result to that is that when you take content and you span it across both screens, it's going to have an effect on what you're missing between the two. So if we look here where it says rules, we're missing all of that back end of the letter R, and just sort of what the gap is between them. On Duo 2, the screens are actually curved around the edge here, so they get closer to the middle. So let's open up Twitter and let's see if there's an appreciable or noticeable difference. Do we gain anything at all? And honestly, the answer there is no. I believe that says public, but I just see P and then I pick up with the I. On this Duo, do we get anything? I've got P and then I almost get the I. So I mean, we're talking about a tiny amount of additional pixels that are going to be visible when spanned between the two. A really, really small difference there. Now, while we are still hanging in on hardware, let's take a look at the speakers, because the speaker setup is actually really different on Duo 2, and it's really important, at least to me. So on the original Surface Duo, you have one speaker right down here in a mono setup. Whereas on Surface Duo 2, you have a speaker right down here, and you have another speaker right up here. And I know a lot of people immediately go, why would you put speakers caddy corner like this? Well, the reason is because they're stereo no matter how you use it, right? We're stereo if we're here, right? Let's put it in phone mode and think about where that speaker is, right? You go around, now you got a speaker here and a speaker here. You are still in stereo. Let's put it in tint mode. Guess what? You're still in stereo. It's actually really intelligent the way that they did that. So stereo versus mono, but then we got to also talk about just the general sound quality. Just what does it sound like? How did it change between the two? So let's open up YouTube Music and let's go to Tried and True Hook by Blues Traveler, just because it's a very dynamic song, right? It's a dynamic song, and I like the way it sounds. And we're going to crank the volume to about 50% on both of them. We're going to be careful here not to get demonetized. Keep this to a short amount of time. And let's do Duo 1 first. The microphone is going to be about an even distance right here between the two of them. So let's test Duo 1 now. That's 5 seconds. Okay, let's do Duo 2 now. Okay, that's 5 seconds there. Let's go back, and now we're going to crank the volume all the way up, because to me, I don't think you're going to hear much of a difference with it quiet like that. So Duo 1 maxed out. Okay, so I'll talk about what I'm hearing after I let you hear this one. Okay, so what do I hear in person? Duo 2 is significantly louder than Duo 1. Duo 1 has a lot of distortion at high volumes. It gets a little tinny. You have almost no bass at all. It's very, very tinny and light. And like I said, there's a lot of distortion at high volumes. Duo 2 sounds like a normal flagship. It is not as loud as my Z Fold, which is phenomenal in terms of speakers, but it is very, very good. And the other thing I can tell you is that I do this thing a lot where when I'm doing something, I bring my Duo with me, I put it in tint mode, set it down and play a video. With Duo 1, I would often, let's say I was doing the dishes or loading the dishwasher or loading laundry or something, and I just always have to have stimulation because I'm addicted to stimulation like all of us are. And I wouldn't be able to hear what was happening. I'd wind up having to pull earbuds out of my pocket and put them in to be able to hear what was going on. Duo 2, that does not happen. Duo 2 is loud enough to be over whatever it is that I'm doing. Another piece of hardware that I do need to cover is battery life, and honestly, they're really, really similar. So the battery actually is a little bit bigger on Duo 2, but you also have a faster processor, which is going to take up a little bit more power. Potentially, there's also optimizations and so forth, so that it's going to be close. But there's also a bigger 90 hertz set of displays, and that's going to pull battery as well. So even though it's a bigger battery, the battery life is really, really similar. For me, I tend to get between 4 and 6 hours of screen time on either device. I unplug it in the morning, 6:30, 7 o'clock, and I might charge it here and there through the day. If I'm sitting at my desk and I've got a charger sitting here, I may just instinctively plug the thing in. If I'm going for a drive, I might instinctively plug it in. But in general, I could make it from 6:30, 7 o'clock to 8 or 9 o'clock at night and be okay. Again, 4 to 6 hours of screen time. If you're somebody that uses your phone 8, 10 hours a day, you're going to kill the thing. That just is what it is. Another piece of hardware that I'm not going to cover in this segment, I'll cover it later, is the camera. So don't think I forgot about it. It is coming in its own section, probably at the end. Let's now dig into some sort of general software things about the two devices. So one of the things you can do on Duo and Duo 2 is just spanning your different apps. And I had several different people ask me, hey, show if there's any difference in how the apps span, the performance of spanning apps. So let's do this. We've still got a bunch of apps in the background, right, from what we've done earlier through this, and I'm going to leave them all there because that's just a more normal experience. So let's launch Twitter on both of them, and then let's span them both. And you tell me if you see any appreciable difference in the way that they span. I don't think you're going to see a whole heck of a lot, but maybe you will, maybe you won't. Does it look a little bit smoother on Duo 2? I think that it does, but is it like a huge deal? Is it like way different? Is it something that's going to really bother you? Probably not. App spanning, pretty simple. Now, something that we do have now that just came to Duo 2, and this is part of the reason why I'm doing this video is because so many new features came to Duo 2, is auto spanning. So you can set particular apps to span automatically. If you go into your settings and you look for Surface Duo features, you can go to span apps automatically. and you can pick an app. Like, let's just do the camera app because I don't have to redo this on both devices. And let's go home. And then if you launch the camera app, it's going to launch it spanned as it just did. And same thing on Duo 2. So that experience is honestly really, really similar. And similarly to spanning, the act of actually moving apps from screen to screen is pretty much identical as well. They both do it about equally well. Now, one thing that you are going to, at least in my experience, have more often on Duo 1 than Duo 2 are just general bugs. Now, I will say this, Duo 1, I should say, is running far, far better than it was before, but I do still occasionally have little weird launcher bugs where the launcher will kind of overlay itself on top of itself. You have stuff stacked in a weird way, or when you rotate it, weird things may happen. Still happens occasionally, but it is a far cry from where it was early on. This thing was a really buggy device, and it really isn't very buggy at all now. And in fact, just little things that are so much better, like touch response, is so much better on the original Duo. I still think it's probably better on Duo 2, but the days of not being able to properly swipe up to dismiss apps, those days are pretty much gone. You saw me miss one there, but I think that was literally because I started on this. I think I just missed. Those days are largely gone. It's pretty much as smooth on Duo 1 as it is on Duo 2, and I think that's a really good thing. And when it comes to things like typing, that touch response is really similar there as well. They're very, very close. I still think Duo 2 is a bit better in terms of touch response, but Duo 1's not going to drive you crazy in the same way that it did before. Something else some people did want to see if there was any difference with was just the simple act of going into phone mode, and there actually are some differences. So on Duo 1, when you go into phone mode, it is actually trying to pay attention to the gyroscopes to determine which screen you're intending to use in phone mode. And it's pretty good at this. Whenever you go back around, it's going to guess. But then you're going to see back here, double tap to switch screens, and that's going to be there. And anytime it detects that you flipped it, that will pop up again, theoretically, and it should give you the opportunity to switch screens. But if I go back and I start over here and we just go into phone mode, I kind of like to just touch down here on the bezel, which is part of why I like the peanut bezel, because it keeps me from touching the screen. You'll see that can be done reliably, pretty smoothly, and you can see how things kind of reflow. Sometimes I'll accidentally scroll or launch an app, but you can kind of get an idea there of what that experience is like. There's some weirdness sometimes, but that's kind of par for the course. Now on Duo 2, things are a little bit different. So on Duo 2, it has a setting the Duo 1 does not have, where you can tell it which screen you want it to assume is the screen. So I have it set to the right screen, which is the default one. Your selfie camera is up here, so that makes sense. So even if I do this, you see it is assuming that's the screen you want. Now, that being said, you can go around this way and then double tap to switch screens and then use that display if you want. Now, the weird thing is whenever you flip it, it does not care. It is not listening for that at all. You have committed yourself to this screen. You have a window there. When you first go into phone mode, there is a window where you can do this. And if you miss your window, you got to go open back up and go back again. Now, personally, I think this is fine because I only ever use this screen in phone mode. And you can see by doing that kind of how this situation is, how it works compared to the original Duo. And honestly, it's really similar. Otherwise, again, I do have to point out that you do have the gap between the two displays because of the camera bump in the back, but that is sort of your difference in terms of using phone mode, coming in and out of phone mode. I want to quickly throw in a little bit about some of the accessories, and they're really the only actual official accessories we have for Surface Duo and Surface Duo 2 are the Slim Pen 2 and the Surface Duo 2 pen cover. And so if you somehow don't know about this pen cover, basically it is a cover for your Surface Duo 2. This is a terrible picture. That is better. And it will allow the Slim Pen 2 to magnetically attach to the back and charge. Duo 1 does not have this cover, but it can still use the Slim Pen 2, but you're going to need to buy a separate charger to keep it charged. The actual act of using the pen is identical. Both devices can program what the buttons do, single click, double click, and a long click. But again, Duo 2 is the only one that can actually charge the pen and keep the pen with the device on its own. Okay, so now let's talk about the camera, because there are some really big differences there. Obviously with Duo 1, you just have this one camera, and that's the camera you're going to use for everything. On Duo 2, there is a selfie camera, but there is also a large camera array on the back with a 12 megapixel standard, a 12 megapixel ultra wide, and a 12 megapixel 3x telephoto. 2x telephoto? Yeah, 2x telephoto, sorry. And it's a night and day difference in terms of image quality. But there are other differences that we can talk about first before we actually start looking at pictures and a couple of videos. So let's talk about on Duo 1 how this works. You launch your camera and you're looking at a selfie camera, right? So then let's say you want to take a picture of the world. You're going to turn this thing back around. It should intelligently, sometimes you see weird things like this going, okay, so now I'm back and I got to launch the camera again. Now I'm facing back outside. Now, what is supposed to happen here is, goodness gracious, okay. What's supposed to happen is the camera is supposed to be launched. You're supposed to go around and it should do that. And it did at that time. Now, I also moved over to portrait mode on accident somehow in the midst of all of that. So you can see pretty quickly where there are some annoyances involving using this camera. Now, let's say now we're pointing outside to the world. Now we want to take a selfie. We need to flip it around, double tap, and now we're taking a selfie. Okay, so the act of switching lenses, I don't know what's going on back here. Can we get it to flip? You can see why this is still problematic. And believe it or not, this is actually better than it was before. It was actually much worse than that. I don't know what's going on here. Okay, it was actually much worse than that. But to me, the camera experience on Duo, it's not just that the camera itself is bad quality, which it's not great. It's passable in a lot of instances. It's the actual act of taking pictures that drives me insane on this device. On Duo 2, it is so much better, okay? So let's launch the camera app. You saw how quick that was, right? Very, very quick. We're taking a picture of the world. Okay, let's take a selfie. It's like a normal device. You just flip it around. We've got our telephoto, we've got our ultra wide, which they lag for some reason in low light. They have a hard time. Let's aim at this screen here so that it thinks it's a brighter situation, and watch how much quicker this is. For some reason, low light Duo 2 still has some weird lagginess in the viewfinder, but it's not something that you deal with a ton, but it is something that is definitely worth noting. So now let's talk about shutter lag here. So let's just take a picture here. And you can see what kind of shutter lag I'm dealing with on Surface Duo 2. And now let's go to Duo number 1 and let's try and take the same picture. Okay, and I think I successfully took 3 pictures. So again, you can see here, why I have more complaints with the camera here than I do with the camera here. I think that it's pretty plainly obvious what the differences are. But now we actually need to look at camera samples. And I've got a handful of camera samples here that we're going to look at. Duo first and then Duo 2. So let's start here. So this is an image that I like to take a lot, a picture that I like to take a lot because it just does a good job of kind of showing different qualities of an image. With Duo 1 here, you can see how kind of grainy this is underneath my carport here. There's like no detail at all. It's just kind of a drab, underwhelming kind of image. On Duo 2, there is a lot of detail that the dynamic range has been able to pull out of the shadow. You can actually see that these leaves are actually kind of a yellowish color. You can now see the bark on the tree much more. And another advantage that Duo has, let's look at the green leaves over there too, by the way. Look at the difference on those leaves and those leaves. That is a colossal difference. But another advantage that Duo 2 has is it has a telephoto. It's a 2x telephoto and an ultra wide. So those are just pictures that Duo 1 would be totally incapable of getting. So another one here, the red barn, green roof, green leaves here. Pay attention to these colors. The detail is, honestly, it's actually okay. When you're in good lighting, the detail it pulls in is okay. Look at this tree here. But then when we go to Duo 2, everything is just much, much punchier. Look at the greens there. That is much more accurate to my eye as well. And when we zoom in, we got more detail on that tree as well. This is just a better camera all around. In the corner here with my nice, beautiful hammock. Same kind of thing here. Just look at the colors, okay? That's really all you need to see in an image like this is the colors. When we go over, it's an entirely different image, okay? Just, you could ask me, well, are these colors tuned up too high? No, not really. It's spring here in Knoxville. The leaves, the grass is green right now, you know? That's what's going on. It's kind of what it looks like. It really doesn't look like that. This is depressing. Now here's an interesting fact though. So Duo 1 can actually get closer to its subject than Duo 2 can and stay in focus. Don't know why, but it is what it is. So let's look at this dandelion here. Let's zoom in and what kind of detail do we have here? Little spirals here inside the plant. Now let's go to Duo 2. You see how much further away I had to get. But even though I was so much further away, when I zoom in, you could argue that there's still more detail here, a little ant crawling around in there, than there was on the original Duo. So even though I was able to get much closer here than I was here, I feel like this is still a more detailed image, and I think it's definitely the punchier image of the two. In terms of selfies, I actually think that the Duo as a selfie camera is not too bad. Now you will notice that I'm not looking at the camera because I had hit the shutter button. I thought the picture had already taken. I looked down to see if it had been taken, and that was when it took the picture. Typical Duo move. Beard hair test, I think, passes relatively well. Let's go to portrait mode. I think it does okay. This is a little tough with my hair. Duo does an okay job. Duo 2 has much more contrast. I was outside longer after taking this, so my transitions had transitioned further. If we zoom in a bit more though, I think that this is a more detailed image. Definitely more contrast, and portrait mode in this instance actually appeared to fail on Duo 2. This is not a portrait mode picture, so whatever. They're really, really similar though. I don't want to go back outside to retake this picture, so sorry, you're not going to see portrait mode on Duo 2, but just trust me, it's really, really similar to how it is on Duo 1. Imagine this kind of blur on this image and you've got it. So when we do video, for some reason, I have to point this out, for some reason, everything I took just now was upside down on Duo, video included. Everything was upside down. I flipped the video back around. I'm not going to take the time to flip this video right side up because honestly, I have to include this because Duo is weird and it does weird things, and sometimes it takes pictures and videos upside down. And I think you can still kind of understand the detail of what's going on. You can see the lack of stabilization. It's probably a little bit nauseating. Colors are washed out, detail isn't great, and it's not well stabilized. That is pretty much what you're going to get. When we talk about Duo 1 on the selfie video, look, I am walking at a relatively normal pace. How easy am I to hear? How does it look? You tell me. I think that selfie video on Duo is a lot better. You're up closer to the subject, and that definitely does help out a lot. The detail's okay. Stabilization is still really bad. Duo 2, the colors are much punchier, much richer, much more contrast. Stabilization is absolutely abysmal, horrible, terrible. Video on Duo and Duo 1. Video on Duo 1 and Duo 2, I should say, both pretty bad. Selfie video on Duo 2. All right, now we're doing selfie video on Duo 2. How do I look? How do I sound? What is the stabilization or lack thereof look like? You be the judge. So I think that the biggest difference there is just the level of contrast. There also seems to be some weird like face smoothing stuff going on there. Like I've got no pores. I'm not really sure what's going on there as well. But video on both is really, really bad. But in general, photography, Duo 2 absolutely mops the floor with Duo 1. Not just in the ability to take pictures, like the act of doing the picture taking, but also in the quality itself. Now there is one more sort of elephant in the room that I want to address. And I've addressed this before. A lot of people were like, yeah, but when you're taking pictures with Duo 1, you can do it like it's a regular phone, taking your regular pictures. And with Duo 2, you've got to be in book mode. You've got to be here taking pictures. And that is absolutely true. And some people are going to be bothered by this. Some people are not going to be bothered by this. Personally, I am okay with it because it enables you to be able to see the picture that you just took on the other screen. So whenever I take a picture here, you're going to see in just a moment, it's going to pop up on this other screen so that I can see the picture I took. I can see how I framed it. Do I need to improve it in any way? And that is a really useful thing to be able to do. And there's also something else that I really like. I love when I'm outside taking pictures, you're doing this, you're looking up and it's bright outside, it hurts my eyes, I'm very photosensitive. I like to take Duo and hold it like this and actually move the viewfinder down here and then use it almost like a periscope where I can be looking down and shielding my eyes from the sun and still seeing up and out to take my picture. This is something that older cameras actually used to do, and there's some logic behind why they did that. Now, some people laugh at that and say that's ridiculous. Who would ever do that? Well, I do it, and it's just something that I'm going to throw out there. So there you go. We are probably at this point approaching 33, 34 minutes. I was going to include gaming in this too, but the video is just going to be way too long. So I'm going to do a gaming video separate at some time in the very near future. Hopefully here in just a couple of days I can manage to get that done. So we're going to wrap it up here. That is pretty much everything I can think of in terms of comparing Duo 1 and Duo 2. I'm sure there are things that I have missed, but again, we're way over 30 minutes. This is a really, really long video. I got to wrap it somewhere. So these are the things that you guys suggested on Twitter and so forth when I was talking to people. So there you go. Decide from there what you want to do. In my opinion, it's going to come down to a couple of pretty small factors if you should get Duo 1 or Duo 2. Do you care about taking pictures? Do you care about having good speakers? Those are the two biggest differences to me between the two. The photography experience and the speaker experience is night and day better on Duo 2. So if you're like me and that's very important to you, Duo 2 is the way to go. For a lot of other people though, Duo 1 for the price is really, really good at this point. Guys, thanks for making it through the end of this video. If you did make it through all of this video, thank you a ton, because that's a long video to make it through. I'll see you on the next one, and until next time, stay nerdy, my friends.